The mountaintop was silent now, save for the faint crackling of the newly purified flame. Serafini, still weakened by the intense battle, could feel the weight of exhaustion pulling at her. But despite the toll it had taken on her body, she knew that they had succeeded. The corruption had been purged, and the phoenix's fire, its true essence, burned brighter than ever. Dorian held her close, his hands gentle yet strong, offering her the warmth of his presence. "We did it," he repeated, his voice full of awe and relief. The flame, once twisted and distorted, now radiated purity, its golden light filling the summit, spilling across the jagged peaks of the mountain of ashes like the first rays of a new dawn. Seraphine's breath was shallow, but she managed to smile, her fingers weakly clutching the pendant of the phoenix at her chest. "We've restored balance, Dorian, the world ... it will heal now." But even in her fragile state, a sense of unease lingered. She could feel it, the faintest tremor in the air, a whisper carried on the wind. The guardian of the forgotten had been vanquished, but its last words echoed in her mind, "The phoenix ... will rise again." Her mind raced as she sat up, pulling away from Dorian's embrace. "It's not over," she murmured, her eyes narrowing as she looked toward the horizon. "The flame is restored, yes, but there is something more we've yet to face." The guardian's words ... they were a warning. Dorian, though visibly tired, stood beside her. "Do you think the phoenix's return was a sign of a new threat?" Serafini nodded, her gaze distant, focused on the distant lands below, perhaps. "The balance has been restored, but the forces of life and death are in constant motion. The phoenix represents rebirth, yes, but rebirth often comes with sacrifice. The land, the magic ... it all must adapt." Alicia, who had been standing in quiet contemplation, stepped forward. "We've purified the flame, the guardian is gone, and with it, the corruption that plagued the world. But Serafini is right, there's always a price for such power, and the phoenix's flame is not easily contained." Amara approached next, her brow furrowed in thought. "The question is, what kind of price are we talking about? What if the phoenix's power attracts something even darker, a force that seeks to seize it for its own ends?" Galen's eyes, always sharp and calculating, scanned the distant landscape. "Whatever comes, we will be ready. We've faced the darkness before, we can face it again." But Seraphine's concern did not fade. She could feel it deep in her bones. The world was healing, yes, but there was still an underlying tension, a subtle shift in the fabric of the magic itself. It was as if the world had been holding its breath, and now, with the restoration of the phoenix's fire, it was on the verge of releasing something dark, something unknown. The journey back from the summit of the Mountain of Ashes was long, but it gave them time to recover, to plan, and to reflect. The winds had calmed, and the skies were clearer than they had been in years. But Seraphine's mind never ceased its swirling thoughts. She could feel the change, the lingering sense of something just beyond her reach. When they reached the plains below, they were met by a messenger from the capital of Solara. The royal seal was unmistakable. Serafini tore open the parchment with trembling hands. "Your Majesty, urgent news, the peace we fought for is threatened. A new force has emerged. There are rumors of a being known as Ishara, the Wraith of Eternity. She is said to be a harbinger of the Phoenix's return, and she seeks to claim its power for herself. Reports indicate that she is already gathering followers in the eastern deserts. We need your leadership." Seraphine's heart skipped a beat. Ishara, the Wraith of Eternity. The name sent a shiver of dread through her, for she knew the legends. Ishara was not just any dark sorceress or power-hungry tyrant. She was an ancient being, a remnant of a time long past, when the Phoenix's flame had first been born. The legends spoke of her as an eternal soul, a spirit bound to the cycle of death and rebirth. She was said to be a creature of endless hunger, seeking to feed on the very essence of life itself. And now, it seemed, she sought to claim the phoenix's power to reignite her own twisted existence. "We have no time to waste," Serafini said, her voice urgent and filled with newfound resolve. "Ishara cannot be allowed to seize the phoenix's fire. If she does, all that we have fought for will be undone." The group rallied around her, their faces grim but resolute. They had come so far, faced countless battles, lost friends, and made sacrifices that had shaped them all. But now a new, even more dangerous battle loomed on the horizon. Serafini and her companions travelled swiftly, making their way toward the eastern deserts, where Ishara's forces were said to be gathering. The desert was a land of harsh winds and scorching heat, a place where life struggled to take root and the sun burned mercilessly overhead. As they approached, the landscape seemed to darken, as though the land itself recognized the coming threat. The winds grew colder as they neared the heart of the desert. It was unnatural. The sands shifted in eerie patterns, swirling into dust storms that seemed to follow them, as though the very earth was alive with malevolent intent. They arrived at the ruins of a once great city, now buried beneath layers of sand. In the distance, they could see flickers of movement figures clad in dark robes, their eyes glowing with a faint, otherworldly light. Ishara had already begun to build her army. Serafini stood at the edge of the city, her eyes narrowing. She could feel the pull of the phoenix's fire, but it was different now. It was faint, as if it were being smothered by a darker, more oppressive force. "We're close," Elysia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can feel the magic. It's corrupted, like the air itself is being drained of life." "We need to move quickly," Galen added, drawing his sword. "The longer we wait, the stronger she becomes." As they ventured deeper into the ruins, the air grew thick with the scent of decay, and the faintest whispers echoed from the walls, speaking of endless nights and eternal hunger. The ruins seemed alive with shadows, shifting and stretching in unnatural ways. Then, from the center of the city, a figure emerged, a woman, draped in flowing black robes, her long silver hair billowing around her like a storm. Her eyes were black voids, devoid of light, and her voice carried the weight of centuries. "I am Ishara," she said, her voice both soft and commanding, like the rustling of dry leaves in the wind. "And I have come for what is mine." Her followers gathered around her, shadows that danced and writhed with a life of their own. Serafini stepped forward, the phoenix's fire burning brightly within her chest, but her voice was calm, steady. "You seek the phoenix's flame, but it is not yours to take, Ishara. The balance has been restored. You will not undo what has been done." Ishara's laugh was cold, hollow. "Balance? You think you have restored balance, foolish child. The phoenix's flame is not meant to be contained. It was never meant to be wielded by any one person. It is a force of destruction, of eternal change. I have waited for this moment, for the moment when the phoenix returns, and now it will serve me." The ground beneath them trembled, and the skies above darkened. The very earth seemed to cry out in agony as the forces of life and death collided. Seraphine's heart pounded, but she knew what had to be done. She could feel the phoenix's fire, its power surging within her. It was time to end this, once and for all. To restore the balance and ensure that the phoenix's flame would never be corrupted again. With a cry of determination, Serafini summoned all of her power, channeling the phoenix's fire through her body, its flame bursting from her hands in a torrent of light and heat. But Ishara, with a sinister smile, raised her hand and drew from the darkness, countering Seraphine's magic with a blackened force of her own.